This is Tracy Hales Vass with Right on Four Corners on KSJE 90.9 FM. Today, I'm excited to talk to Jim Tritten of the Corrales Writing Group about their anthology, Love, Sweet to Spicy, and their other collaborative work. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Tracy. How are you today?
I'm great. You calling me from Corrales?
Corrales, New Mexico, a little village north and west of Albuquerque of about 8,000 people and about 2,000 horses, we think.
Last count. That's great. I've been intrigued with the Corrales Writing Group since I met you all in November.
Right.
Of course, the first thing that comes up to any writer is, how on earth do you manage to write collaboratively?
That's a very good question. And so the answer is very slowly, very methodically, and with a great deal of planning and effort.
Uh-huh.
So what we did initially was to write individual stories, and then when we decided that we wanted to write an anthology that was focused on romance, we thought it would be better if we were paired in groups with men and women in the group, so that we would get both perspectives. Now, a couple of us had done writing in groups before. I had done that for dozens of years while I worked for the federal government, but it was new to some of the folks. So the process that we used was to first, everybody in the group came up with one idea for a story.
Okay.
And they just wrote a paragraph, nothing more than this is the outline, this is what the story would be. Then we put all those ideas into a witch's hat, took a picture, and then we pulled out stories, ideas, and then if you picked your own story, you put it back in. You had to pick somebody else's story.
Okay.
Then we formed into a man and woman group of either 2 or 3, and the 2 people to write the story could not be the person whose idea it was.
Oh, interesting.
And that was to avoid the problem of, well, that's not what I meant. I want the story to be like this.
Exactly.
Neither person had any skin in the game on the story. We were just going to use this as a jumping off point, and we would write. So the way we chose to do it, and that was very successful, is that one person would write the first draft. And then that would be turned over to the other people in the group, and then they would rewrite it. And they wouldn't have to get approval from anybody. They could just rewrite it totally.
Mm-hmm.
And we would either do that 2 or 3 times, and then all 3 or 2 people would get into an agreement on, yeah, that's about as good as this story would be, and then we would share it with the rest of the group. We wrote collaboratively because we wanted to take advantage of the expertise and the knowledge and the different biases and the different way of looking at the world that men and women will have.
Makes sense. And I think you've captured that. So one thing I wanted to ask you, I noticed that there's 2 stories that you wrote with Sandy Hoover.
Yes.
And in one, her name's first, and in the other one, your name's first.
Yes. Usually the first person listed, it was the first person to write the story.
Okay.
Or the one who devoted the most amount of time to the story, or we flipped a coin. I mean, it didn't really matter that much. We all equally did all the work, and it was, spread the wealth, make sure everybody gets a good credit.
I think that's great.
Sandy's very good to write with. I've written a number of things with her, and we have a good working relationship, as do all of the people in the group. Each one of those people, we all work together. It's a small village. We all know each other. We all get along. We've traveled together. We socialize together. We write together.
That's great. Now, how did you all come together in the first place?
Another good question. It started out with one gentleman who is no longer in the group who wanted to learn how to write, so he wanted to leave a legacy of, these are the truths that these are my words, not his. These are the truths that I've learned in my 80 years of life, and I want to leave these for the world, especially my children. So he hired somebody to come in and help him learn how to write and put a book together. And then she talked them in, the way I understand it is that she talked them into opening it to a critique group. Mm-hmm. So the initial 3 or 4 people who were in the Corrales writing group formed merely as a critique group to help each other write, and there was no thought of publication. And then I joined, and some other people have joined over time. At some point after we had thought we were writing pretty good stuff, then one of the people wanted to do an anthology, and I was against it. I voted against it, but we went ahead and did it anyway. My thought was that it doesn't have a theme. And I've been in many books, and I've been in many academic anthologies, but they always were about something.
Mm-hmm.
And our first one was about just, we happened to live in Corrales, and we all wrote. So it's all over the map on what the subjects were, but it worked.
Great.
And we were financially solvent, even though we're making these. This is the 5th year of publishing books, or 6th year by now. Then we decided, this time we're going to try something different. We're going to try actually with a theme, and the theme was romance, and the book's title is Love, Sweet to Spicy.
Yes, Love, Sweet and Spicy. I enjoyed the reading of it. I guess we should take a minute to give the names of the writers in the group.
Absolutely. So we have Chris Allen, and she's a very, very funny lady. She's the only person I know who can make somebody laugh writing a story about her mother's funeral.
Okay.
John Atkins, he is a very good writer, does speculative fiction if he's on his own, and he was an editor of one of our local newspapers. Maureen Cook taught writing as you did, and she's an excellent writer. She is working on a novel which we're all critiquing while we're doing other projects. Sandy Hoover, she is our resident bird lady. Boy, if there's anything you ever want to know about birds, she is the right person to go to. She writes a variety of things, some really funny things, and she's written some very good things about the outside world. Tom Neiman is a retired air traffic controller, worked for the FAA, it was an Army air traffic controller, and he's been writing a variety of different things. I think right now he's on some kind of a mystery. And then Pat Walkow, she worked in the computer world for a number of years and wrote nonfiction, and she's written an award-winning book about her father-in-law who emigrated into the United States, and his story of being a displaced worker in a Catholic prisoner inside Germany during World War II.
Oh, my.
Not a Jewish prisoner, but a Catholic prisoner from Poland, and he was a forced laborer. And then there's me, and I've got a wide variety of backgrounds, and I've been writing since I was in high school.
Well, that's great. And you do have at least one publication with your wife, Jasmine?
Yes. Cato's Grand Adventure with original illustrations by my wife, Yasmin.
Oh. And
she is a very talented artist, and she's a writer also. And in fact, tomorrow she has a piece coming out. It's officially released tomorrow from a publisher in Florida. So a nice variety of talent. We've had people come and go from the group, and we've all learned from them. But this group of 7, we've been together now for a couple of years, and we all enjoy working with each other, and we're having some fun with more collaborative writing. Pat Walkow and Chris Allen and John Atkins and Tom Neiman are writing a story about a murder story set in Lake Fortuna, which has got a historical basis to it. And, of course, they're taking some liberties with it. Sandy Hoover and I are finishing up a mystery set in Panama.
Oh.
And we're both both of these are probably in the neighborhood of novellas. I don't think they're going to be full novels, but novellas, so maybe 25,000 words. We're doing them in collaborative groups, 2 different collaborative groups.
Well, that's exciting. So how often do you get together?
We meet every other week. That gives us a week to do some writing, polishing, and then we submit the material that each of us reads. We get it on the Sunday at noon, and then we meet on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So that gives us a few days to review it and critique it. We do all of our critiquing, and everything is all done online. There's no paper. So we sit there, and I get a Word document. We mark it up with comments and critique it, and then we have a standard set of 5 or 6 questions that we answer on each new story. What's working? Where am I a little confused? Is there anything that's repeating? Standard kind of critique questions, and we do that for each new story that comes in. And then we usually run the stuff through the group at least twice, and if it's going to be published, it'll go through many more times than that.
Oh, that's great. Very exciting, and it's actually working for you all.
It is working fine for us. We've tried to master everything from the writing to the production to the marketing and to the business of it. I mean, the
Right.
Corrales Writing Group is an LLC,
Oh,
and it's solvent.
that's great.
And we've learned how to not buy 600 copies of a book and then stick it in your garage and then figure out, well, what do I do with these?
Right. Oh, yes.
Yes, we all know what that's like. So
We
we haven't
do.
made that mistake.
Good.
We've actually learned very well by going to classes at Southwest Writers,
Uh-huh.
at University of New Mexico, at Oasis, at Osher, things that are available to us in the Albuquerque area.
And there are many in Albuquerque. That's great.
Yeah, there's lots of good classes to go to.
Well, this might be a good time for you to read something for us.
Sure. Let me just pick a couple that I had in advance just to give you an idea. Tom Neiman, his whole working life is in the left brain. You know, he's working for the federal government. He's writing technical reports, and then all of a sudden he starts writing stuff like this. Gretchen and I recently celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary. Although not our first rodeo, I'm certain it will be our last. Marriage is one thing, but having a life partner is truly rare, as I've found mine. And that's not what you'd expect from an Army veteran and a guy who spent his life working for the feds.
That's right. Yeah, he's got a couple of works in there that are not technical writing.
They are. And then there's stuff that is just absolutely hilariously funny. Chris Allen, who I mentioned, did that. I mean, I can remember reading this in draft when I was traveling, and I was coming through the airport in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I started reading this line, and the next thing I just broke up laughing. She was talking about how she had met her husband, and she's talking about Paul, and she goes, Paul scrunched his way across the desert gravel until he was opposite me. I shed one of my boots and grabbed his zipper with my toes.
Right.
And I went, what?
Exactly.
That's the funniest line I've ever read. She's a very good writer. She's just tried something new with a sort of a monster story, sort of a horror story. One of the newest projects that we're just now developing is a collaboratively written anthology having to do with kale. Kale. I want to make sure you knew
Okay.
I meant what I said. And we've got original artwork that will go in there related to kale. The stories will be all kinds of varieties of we like it, we hate it, it's terrible, this is why you shouldn't eat it, and it'll all be done tongue-in-cheek. But our objective will be something like a novella-sized anthology that you'd find that would be an impulse buy for somebody to read.
That's great. Kale. I love it.
Yeah. Now, one of the other authors that's in our group, I mentioned Pat Walkow. She wrote an absolutely superb story in our anthology called Love's Assassin, and the genesis of the story is that a woman is going through a garage sale and she comes across lost love letters from her first boyfriend.
Right.
And the discussion is absolutely necessary to really understand the impact of this story. We've got a bunch of women, and they all swoon when they hear her reading the story. Oh, it was wonderful! You found the love letters from your first boyfriend. And all of the guys, we all looked at each other and said, "What are you kidding? You saved love letters from your boyfriend? No way in the world would any guy do that. The first thing you do is burn them all and deny that you ever had another girlfriend before you ever go out with the next one." Okay? And then the girls all looked at us and they said, "Well, you mean you didn't save any letters?" And we looked, "Of course not. What are you, crazy?" We save old tires, spark plugs,
Right.
tools for cars that you no longer own. You know, we have a garage full of really meaningful stuff, but there are no letters from an old girlfriend anywhere in our house.
Oh,
Good
dear.
story, though.
It is a good story.
It's a good story, and I've never yet met a man who has admitted to having any old letters from his girlfriend.
Admitted, key word.
Exactly. There's another good one to perhaps take a peek at. We'll look at Sandy for a moment and the opening to the Fiji story.
Oh yes, I loved the Fiji story.
Yeah, that's a good. We actually have signed a contract to produce that as a novella for a publisher.
Oh.
And so, for your readers, does this entice you into reading this story? She sat at the end stool closest to the lagoons, sipping on a Fiji moonrise, the house specialty at the Natawa Bay Resort's Water's Edge Bar. The thatched roof overhead rustled in the breeze off the bay. She watched the rapidly darkening sky. Well, that's a swift. The sun crashes into the ocean without taking a breath. Her shoulders slumped as her mood followed the sun, and she stirred her drink absently, staring at the line of white, lacy foam and listening to the soft murmur of waves. In the dark, they were the only indicators of the wide Pacific beyond the surf. I mean, I hope that takes you there. That tells you exactly where this story is going to be. It's a romance, so it's boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets the girl back.
Right.
We got the formula, but I think we made it work in that story.
I do too. I really liked it, especially that opening part that you just read. There's that conflict in there where she's in this beautiful place but feeling down. It just sets it right up.
Yeah, there's a number of really interesting twists in there.
Yes.
And it's a good example. This story particularly is a good example of the advantage of working in a team with a man and a woman. When some pages later, about after boy has lost girl and he's trying to find her again, there's a scene in which two guys, the boy in question, who she finds, and his best old buddy, a real old buddy, and they meet up in a bar in California, and they're going to have a discussion about how he can go find this gal. So the opening between these two guys is, so how they hanging, Mark? Now, when Sandy wrote that first line, it was very polite. It was not as graphic as that. But the point being that she said, I said, no, you need to rewrite this. And here's an example of what two old guys, two old buddies would say to each other. Nobody's around. There's no wives. There's no girlfriends. There's just two guys who've known each other since college. And that would be an appropriate man versus man, man on man greeting.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, well, my Richard never says that. I said, exactly. He would never say that in front of you.
In front of you.
But ask Richard. He won't admit it. I'll ask Richard. Would he say that to an old buddy that he would have met in a bar like that? There's some other really good ones. Pat and Tom and Chris wrote Rail Runner Romance.
Yes.
A nice description of a woman looking at a man across the table and how did she perceive him. And I dare say that a man would have written this totally different than a woman. She peeked at the man who sat across the aisle. He was reading a book. I'll say 40-ish, maybe almost 50. Handsome. Thick hair with a little gray at the temples. Interesting clothing. Dark jeans, neatly pressed. Who wears pressed jeans? A tan blazer. Looks like cashmere, but still worn. Beaten up brown leather satchel. What am I doing? Stop staring. Keep a comfortable distance. Okay, that's an insight as how women are going to look at a guy. And so if you try to write that as a guy, you can get there eventually, but it's a lot easier if you sit there and work with another person,
right?
And go, well, how would a woman say that, or what would she be thinking internally?
Right, and that story goes from her point of view then to his point of view.
We had a lot of fun mastering point of view in these stories.
Yes,
which is always a tough thing for any writer to learn,
especially collaboratively, I would think.
Yeah, but we all learned from each other, and we enjoyed the learning process. Then we did a little bit of stuff on animals and animals passing.
Yes.
John Atkins was very good with his story about remembering a dog, and there's a give and take back and forth on who's supporting whom. But there's a very poignant short paragraph here on the passing of his dogs when his dog Hoover finally departed. Several lives have come and gone through my world since Hoover left. Many of them have had four legs. Some of them, too, regardless of the species. Most shared the nickname Damn It, and they all brought joy to my life. When the time came to say goodbye, I felt Hoover's muzzle press softly against my hand and urged me to express how much they were loved, and to let them know that an old friend with piercing eyes and an unmistakable grin was ready to show them how it's done. Some went more quickly and quietly than others, but each left them in the company of the best guide of any soul that any soul could have. Very, very, very touching writing.
Yes.
And we've all, not all of us, but most people have experienced the loss of a treasured pet, and
Yes.
it's hard.
It is.
And then I really like Maureen Cook's story about the trials and tribulations with her husband, who is in again and out again, and he's got lots of problems. And finally, after a horrendous story, she ends it by recording that the fictional husband then he wants to get back to her, and he writes, "Hey, honey pot, boo-boo bear, thank you for being the best wife in the entire world. Thank you for giving me the space I needed to clear my head. You won't even recognize the new me. I swear I'm a changed man. With Linda's help, I've got the meds under control. I want you to come home. Love and smooches, your Nicky Wicky." She really knows how to get to the heart of a matter with, in this case, she's writing about a husband who has a mental illness.
Right.
And the difficulty of trying to make that relationship. So the book, Love, Sweet to Spicy, it's
Yes.
got all kinds of different things for different people, but I think there's a lot there that will entertain and meet the expectations of an educated and experienced reader.
I do too. Yes, I enjoyed it very much. Now, where can people find this?
Well, first thing you have to do is come to Corrales and go to the Corrales Pharmacy.
Okay.
And if you go to Albuquerque, you go to Organic Books. That's where our books are. And, of course, we sell them, and we have them available on Kindle, and we have them available in paperback and from Amazon.com. And they're all priced well. I think all the Kindles are under $5, and the going price for the paperbacks are going to be around $15, depending on how old they are. But there's going to be a couple of versions that are very clearly labeled the name of the book, and then it says in color. And that's because we do something that's very unique in that we add in either photographs or artwork, original artwork from Corrales people, into the books. And so if you really want to see the glory of the photographs or the artwork, then you buy the color version.
Yes.
But they're beautiful color illustrations that are in there, artwork by some of our extremely talented Corraliano sculptors and artists of a whole variety. There's all kinds of that, and then just nice pictures of the village itself. So available on Amazon, the Kindle version at under $5, of course. All the artwork's going to be in color.
That's right.
And we did that deliberately so that people who wanted to see the artwork would have a way to do it. And then we made sure that all of the artists themselves who contributed their artwork, because these were all donations for us to use, were able to get it as close to cost as possible. We actually spent a considerable amount of time meeting with various artists and then, asked them, will you let us use your artwork in a book? And no, you're not going to make any money.
Right. Well, how long did it take to put Love, Sweet to Spicy together?
I'm going to guess it was about a year. It runs about a year to put a book together, from starting out with, well, what are we going to write? Are we going to have a theme, not a theme? Who wants to write ones? In this case, probably about a year and a half for that one, or a year and a quarter or something like that. A little bit longer than average. And we do all the work. We do everything. There's nobody that's been hired to do anything with these books. We have all learned how to be an editor. We have all learned how to do the proofreading that's necessary for a good publication. And all of our books, every single one of them has won an award.
Yes.
And that tells you that people look at our books and they go, well, this was produced, you guys did all this work? You didn't hire anybody? And we went, no. We learned how to do it. And we did it. Everything in there, every single thing has been done by a member of the Corrales Writing Group.
Oh, that's great.
We rotate the duties so that it's not, so-and-so, that's the editor. No, we all play that role. And when we do the final editing of the proof copies, I mean, we're talking about probably 10 reviews that we go through. I'm very good at reading a book upside down. And that's an extremely good way to proofread if you're looking for formatting.
It is.
I don't want to get caught up in the words. I want to just look and see, is the margins aligned properly? Is there changed in fonts? And I can spot them upside down a heck of a lot easier than I can if I'm reading it.
That's right.
I hope that all of your readers enjoy what we've talked about and inspires them to go log on to Amazon.com and get yourselves a copy of one of our anthologies. They have lots of different content, and I wish them all well up there. You have a nice little town. I've stayed at the Silver River Bed and Breakfast.
Oh yes, very nice place.
Yeah, very nice place, and I've eaten Thai food in that restaurant in the middle of the town, which is incredibly good.
It is. We love Boone's. Yep.
So thank you very much for letting us have this interview today. And okay, Tracy.
Thank you, Jim. And that was Jim Tritten of the Corrales Writing Group talking about collaborative writing and their many publications. This is Tracy Hales Vass, right on Four Corners on KSJE 90.9 FM in Farmington, New Mexico.